Listening to the We're Talking Football podcast, coming to you from a shared universe podcast studio. I'm Weston. With me, as always, is your boy DJ Lou. Little background to that for those that don't know. Lou's actually been selecting our music, leading into the shows, and yet again, Lou, you've been spot on.
Yes, I also do bar mitzvahs, weddings, and quinceañeras.
Quinceañeras.
So yes.
Obviously, we're here to talk some free agency, and it's time for some players to get the bag. And the more money they make, the more problems they have. So, although Lou, I gotta be a little honest with you this evening. This is gonna be a weird time in a weird market. I don't think, and we're going to unveil over the next few weeks, how not a lot of teams are in a position to overpay the superstars like they have in the past. So excited to have this conversation. Obviously, we talked about most of today is going to be focused on free agency. We're going to hone in on the NFC and AFC East teams. But before we do, I do think it's equally as important to not overlook the most recent news. So Lou, when you're saying your hellos, I'd love for you to dive in and let's spend a few minutes real quick talking about Wentz to the Colts, and then we can go ahead and tackle free agency.
So I'm going to humble myself and also acknowledge that you called it out. So you were right with Wentz going to the Colts. So bravo to you. Bravo to you. Bravo to you. He probably went to the best place he could have went, to be honest with you. To reunite with Frank Wright, the mastermind of those Eagles offense, is starting to come out more and more so about that. But that, again, I don't know how much really improves the Colts. You know my hatred for Wentz. I do think he's Trubisky light. They still could win the South because I feel like the Titans will lose some players in free agency, which we'll talk about later on in our series as we uncover each team, and they'll regress. I just think that Wentz, he'll make those highlight plays that show up on NFL Network, ESPN Network, and what have you, but he's going to bring more negative plays too because his inaccuracies, his decision-making is poor and what have you. So it's going to be a trade-off. He's not going to be as conservative as Rivers and Brissett were, but then again, that's going to also have an adverse effect to them too. On the Eagles fans, you're going to find out shortly that this is going to be a mess for you guys. The fact that you couldn't get a first-round draft pick for a quote-unquote franchise quarterback, I think that was quite telling, even though you try to drum up that interest. And the thing is that boggles my mind that the Eagles have the fourth highest single-player cap charge in the NFL this year at $34 million. It's Carson Wentz, and he's no longer even on that team.
Yeah, a lot to agree with you there, specifically on the point of me being right, and I won't relish into that for too long. I mean, reality, like you said, Lou, to me, it just made the most sense where Wentz could be optimized, and reuniting him with his former offensive coordinator, who's now the head coach of the Colts. For me, I think this is a strong move for the Colts, just for the mere fact that I think he will be able to do more for them and make some of those on-the-fly type plays to counteract some of those on-the-fly type mistakes more so than Phillip Rivers was able to do for them, and they have a really competitive roster. So I don't view this as a drop-off. I don't necessarily view this as an increase in talent, but I think it's the right move, the good move. I think it was robbery what they gave up for him based on what we were reading, what we predicted, what it was going to take to get somebody like Wentz. And, I equally agree that this is a move of desperation for the Eagles. They certainly did not get what they expected. And in short order here, we're going to talk about what a mess it is in Philadelphia right now, especially for a first-time head coach. Not envious of his scenario, but let's not spend too much time there. But if we can just reiterate one more time, I was right. So we'll and, I might drop that one or two more times tonight. But let's go ahead. We got a lot to cover. As I mentioned, NFC East, AFC East, 8 teams. Let's spend some time here talking about free agency, what it looks like. But I want to set expectations for listeners too. Like, Lou, you and I don't live in a fantasy dream world. We're not here to talk about the trades that super fans want and what they imagine in their sleep and what a lot of these writers, those dream scenarios that they think up. We're looking at this like, the draft doesn't exist, trades don't exist. What can the team do with cap and free agency? So let's start in the NFC East and let's talk about things like teams, cap room, Let's identify some top needs, some top free agents, and my favorite topic to hear about is who are going to be those unfortunate kind of cap casualties to help teams get into better positions. And you have the honors of leading us off.
All right, we're going to start off with them boys, a.k.a. a.k.a. America's team, a.k.a. How about them Cowboys? So looking at that team, at first you would think they're doing pretty well when it comes to estimated salary cap space. They have over $19 million, and they're ranked 12th in the league. So you think they're sitting pretty healthy, especially during a time, where the salary cap, is lowered. Looking at their roster, their top needs would be interior defensive line, the edge position. They're thin at cornerback. And if you really want to get technical and nitty-gritty, I would say O-line depth too, because they have some free agents off of there. But we're going to start with the impending free agents and the elephant in the room. But before we do so, I got to ask you a question, Weston. Since 2019, which quarterback has led the league in yards per game in passing?
Well, since we're on their team, Lou, I can only imagine
it's a layup.
It is a layup, and it's Dak Prescott.
Dak Prescott leads all passers with 321 yards per game since 2019. So I don't want to hear from either Cowboy, haters, how Dak, doesn't win games. You gotta stop associating quarterback play with, with wins. So I don't want to hear that at all. He is a top 10 quarterback. He's probably in that range from 6 to 8. So you just gotta pay this man his money. 4 years. $160 million. Just get it done. I'm not sure why this is really dragging on this much. This is a no-brainer. So this elephant in the room named Dak, it has to get done, and I really do think it'll get done. Another player looking at their roster that I think they should look at to re-sign would be Alden Smith. Now, you're probably thinking, Alden Smith, this is crazy. Listen, I thought it was insane when they signed him last year, right? But I'm not sure how much you actually saw him last year, but he had a nice comeback. He did a good job with pressuring the quarterback last year. He was always in the backfield. He did pretty good against the run. Pressuring the quarterback, he had over 50 pressures and 5 sacks, and he was moved up and down the defensive line. So I thought that was pretty impressive. He's not going to break the bank either, and it's a position of need for them, so you got to keep him around. And I always do this to myself. I always look at players that are hard to pronounce. So another player, because they are thin at cornerback, Chidobe Awuzie. Awuzie, like I said, it's very hard to pronounce, but I think they should look at him, re-signing him. He's an average cornerback. He has 4 career interceptions. He's not going to break the bank either. They need to add to that cornerback room, so I think that's something they should look into, re-signing him. Some free agents they need to let go. I'll say Sean Lee. He's long in the tooth. He's 34 years old, declining play, increasing in injuries. You got to get rid of him.
He's not. I have these notes too, Lou. He's no longer a priority for this team. Same
thing with Jordan Lewis. I just feel like he started off hot and kind of has really regressed over the last 2 years of his career. So now I looked at possible cap casualties, and listen, Cowboy fans are probably going to think I'm crazy, but Tyrone Smith. Now let me tell you why. You're like, he's one of the best left tackles out there, but then you have to throw that caveat, when healthy.
Yep.
This guy, I know he's only 30 years old, but he hasn't played a full season since 2015, and the injuries are not like sprained ankle. He has numerous neck injuries, including cervical neck fracture in 2020 where he had to get surgery. He's had numerous back injuries too. Those are something that you can't take light of, and they've always tried to manage his reps in practice because the back's been, tightening up and what have you. But listen, his cap number is $14 million. They can save $5 million, incur $8.8 million in dead money. But that's someone that I think they should really look at when it comes to getting rid of, because I just don't think it's worthy anymore.
All right, so before you dive into
targets.
Targets, right? So I agree. Listen, Dak is priority number one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even close. I chuckle over Alden Smith because I have him literally as my number 3 on here as top free agent priorities for them of their own free agents. I also have Awuzie. The one that I think I have here that maybe you might be missing is Xavier Woods, their safety. Young, right? Not super expensive compared to the safety market. And I think he had moments, right? I think it's hard to judge the Cowboys' defense as a whole when the offense was not holding up their end of the bargain and they were constantly put into some bad spots. A really good offense cures a really bad defense, and vice versa, right? So based on their cap, I think
It'll be tricky.
He's a no-brainer to bring back versus going to get some of these upper echelon individuals that might be out there. So that's the only thing I wanted to chime in. I want to hear more on your commentary on who they should be targeting, because I definitely have some things that I'll throw in the mix there for you too.
Yeah, so real quick, some of their targets, they're going to repeat what they did last year, I feel like. They're going to try to get those bargain bin interior defensive linemen that have been like injured, that once were high on their game, but now because of their injuries over the last couple of years have really devalued them. I'm talking about people like Sheldon Rankins. I think that won't break the bank, that can really pretty much fortify that middle. And K'Wan Short, another player too, that just got released by the Panthers. Both players were got injured the last 2 years, so there is some possibly they might try to rekindle something like that. In addition, you're going to probably think I'm crazy, but how about Tyrod Taylor for Dak insurance? Because Dak pretty much, it was a big injury. I expect him to fully be back, but those mobile quarterbacks do get banged up pretty frequently. And last but not least, I'm going to say Kevin King. They're going to a Dan Quinn cover 3 defense, so you're really in the cover 3 scheme. You really need to get some of those cornerbacks that that will have the size and length that Kevin King does. Now I know he's been criticized what happened against his the game in Tampa when they played Tampa and what have you, but he still would fit in that cover 3 scheme, I think, pretty well.
Yeah,
it won't cost you too much.
Yeah, so crazy. Last week we were in total disagreement throughout this, and this week we're starting off in a lot of agreement. So I think the one area of disagreement for me is from the interior defensive line standpoint, is I think with the cap room that they have. So listen, they have 23 pending free agents of their own, right? And like you said, 19 million in cap. If I'm looking at interior defensive linemen, I think they have enough wiggle room to go get one of the top guys.
Depends if they franchise Dak.
100%, right? So there's a lot pending here, but I'm going to talk a little bit about a scenario where Dak is actually not a Cowboy any longer, but I don't want to give away too much later. But I think they are in play for Leonard Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson, one of these guys who is an interior lineman that creates pressure as well to complement some of that outside pass rush. Actually, in terms of cornerback, I agree with you as a top need, and I think based on cap, they're going to look for some middle-of-the-road guys. I have Kevin King here, literally number 1, Bashad Breeland, Nickel Roby-Coleman, maybe even a Quentin Dunbar. Some of these guys that are I would say 7 to 15 ranked in the top available free agents in the cornerback. Another name that I'll throw out there that I think they'll be interested in, because he has a similar skill set to Jalen Smith, is Avery Williamson. Don't be surprised if they mix it up in linebacker, just somebody who can get after the ball. But here's where I'm going to throw a wrench in everything. If Dak is not back, what happens? You have a lot of skill players that are really good that you need to be able to get the ball back. And you mentioned Tyrod Taylor. I'm going to take this to your least favorite quarterback in the NFL, and I'm going to say Mitch Trubisky is a fit in this offense based on doing similar things to Dak.
I'm calling clickbait.
Listen, does he do it as well as Dak? Absolutely not. But it's a similar skill set, a mobile guy that you get out on the edge and you let him throw on the run. And yes, he's less accurate, he's less whatever. But in terms of my offensive playing calling, I don't have to change the offense, which is exactly what you're saying with Tyrod Taylor. I'm just calling out a different name around that skill set. So, Cowboys, see ya. You need to re-sign Dak. They will. They have to.
He will be playing with them in 2021.
Until you hear my scenario coming up in a short while, but where they won't be. All right. So next team here, staying in the NFC East, I drew the fortunate card of the Philadelphia Eagles. Ugh. Lou, I got to be honest with you. I'm going to go through some of this stuff, but I don't know how else to say this.
This should be short and sweet.
Other than this is a dumpster fire. Yeah. This is a real problem, evidenced by carrying $34 million in dead cap for Carson Wentz when you're already $43 million under the cap. Under the cap. That is a lot.
Over the cap.
Over the cap, sorry. That is a lot of money to make up. They're 31st in cap space. They have 18 pending free agents. Top needs, I'm going to say everything. But if I have to short list it, I'm going to say linebacker, corner, quarterback, wide receiver. I know people are going to say, oh, Jalen Hurts, that's why they got rid of Carson Wentz. Well, is he really the answer? I'm looking at this where the team needs to get better everywhere. The number one question is Jalen Hurts really the actual answer here? So when I'm thinking about ways to make up that cap room, when I look at immediate cap casualties, I'm looking at like Zach Ertz. Like, yeah, he carries $7 million plus in dead cap, but you recognize almost $5 million in savings. Marquise Goodwin has 0 cap hit, $4 and change million in savings. I don't even know what to make of Alshon Jeffrey if they cut him pre-June 1, because they still lose money in the cut, where if they wait post-June 1, they actually get some savings. So, like, -3 and change now, $2 million in savings if they wait post June 1. So, but I understand why they need to move on, because they need to make address the needs for teams. Look what they're doing. I mean, they got rid of Wentz. They're cutting Alshon. They're not going to re-sign Deshaun. Like, these things are actually happening like right now. So they're going to have to trim a lot of fat, and they're going to have to get really creative by purging this roster and doing their best to restructure whatever existing contracts they have. I mean, when you want to, there's nobody that's like a glaring savings outside of Burnett, but how do you cut that guy, right? Like, how do you walk away from that right now? He could be your best defensive player, in my opinion.
I do think they're going to take a page out of the playbook of the Dolphins when they trade away all their assets that year.
Have to.
I also think that the Jets. I think this is going to be a complete tear down the next couple of years to rebuild and try to take a page out of those franchises' book.
Yeah. So Eagle fans, like, you need to draft well. And you need to bring in cheap talent over the next few years. 2021 is going to be spent playing with a lot of guys that you've never heard their name before, and that could continue into the foreseeable future. I'm sure the cap situation gets better next year when some dead money is alleviated and the cap grows again next year, when we can get fans in the stands and things of that nature. So for those identified needs, and Lou, this is where I'm going to rely on you to chime in with some names that you got. I've literally, in my notes here, are young and cheap, young and cheap, young and cheap at every position. That is literally my note. The only thing that I will say, when I get strategic and say, okay, they have to sign somebody, right? Like,
and they're
have
going
to bring people in, people that I think fit. Rashard Higgins as wide receiver out of Cleveland. Yeah. I'm looking at maybe Corey Davis. I'm thinking on the defensive side of the ball, safeties like potentially Malik Hooker, potentially Marcus May. And the one, to me, that stands out, linebacker, the most glaring need, maybe like a Matt Milano. Like, these are household names that, Malik Hooker's been injury prone, right? Marcus May hasn't lived up to his reputation for the Jets, even though I think he's a solid player. Therefore, they're not going to command the same dollar amount that some of these other players are going to claim. So I'm sure you have more insight to this from a pure player standpoint, so I want to let you chime in and interject.
So listen, they cut Deshaun Jackson.
Yep.
Right? So why not fill that speedster with another speedster that would be really cheap? Kenny Stills.
Yeah.
That's another player that could really, fill in the shoes of Deshaun Jackson. Another player, you went Matt Milano. I think it'll be a little more expensive for them. How about Denzel Perryman? Thumper right in the middle,
yep.
Linebacker. That I think could really provide some, solid against the run. But listen, there wasn't too many players. Maybe a quarterback, like a more veteran quarterback, to push Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
But other than that, I really can't see them doing too much this year. This year, I genuinely think it's a throwaway year.
Yeah, and it's hard for us to speculate on anything beyond that at this point leading into free agency, because we literally have not been able to witness how they're going to rectify the cap situation. When we get more clarity on that, maybe they wake up tomorrow morning, they cut 35 players from their roster.
Restructure deals like with Fletcher Cox and what have you.
They're going to have to, but I'm a player in the NFL. I know the cap's gone down. I have to be willing to restructure as well, right? Yeah. There's guaranteed portions of my contract. So they're going to have to go to the people that they have built clout with over the last few years to find that money. So let's get out of this dumpster fire, because I don't want to be in it anymore. I want to get to teams that have some things a little bit more exciting to talk about. So, Lou, that'll put you, again, staying in the East, that puts you up next.
I'm talking about the Washington football team. They surprised a lot of fans and a lot of people last year, how they performed. Estimated salary cap space, they have about $38 million, which ranks them in the top 5. Some of their top needs, I would say wide receiver, quarterback. I'm going to get into that in further detail. Left tackle, and the middle of the linebacking field. Pending free agents, it all starts with Brandon Scherf. This guy is versatile, elite right tackle. He can play in the zone schemes. He can play in power gap schemes. You can't let him walk away. I know he's 29 years old, so he's still in the prime of his career. You're going to throw some injury concerns in there. I get it. He missed a couple of games, but nothing serious. Last year, he only had 2 penalties, allowed 3 sacks, ranked him like 19th overall amongst guards. I mean, that's pretty impressive. You probably can get something done for 4 years, $15 million average, I would say. Another player they should look to lock up that's a free agent, and you're going to think I'm crazy here, but Reuben Foster. This is strictly high risk, high reward. Yeah, I know he's a head case. He has injury history, the shoulder injury, the ACL tear. But the reward is he's cheap. He's only 26 years old. And he's in a position of need. Why not take that flyer? That's why I think it'll be a cheap signing.
Listen, if anybody can get him right, it's Ron Rivera.
Love Ron Rivera.
Yeah. So,
last but not least, Ronald Darby. He's had an up and down career. He's good in man coverage because of his speed. Not a ball hawk. Doesn't have a tremendous amount of interceptions. I just think you got to keep that pass defense together because they were so productive last year, getting to the quarterback, and the back end held its own as well. Some players, I think, one player that comes to mind that I think they'll let go will be Ryan Carrigan. He's 33 years old when the season starts. They are crowded up and down that defensive line, so Ron Rivera has a bunch of toys he can utilize, and Carrigan's kind of going to be the odd man out because of his age. He doesn't want to settle for a complimentary role. He wants to start. And he's only averaged 5 sacks over the last 2 years. Listen, I love Ryan Carrigan, but it's just you can't re-sign a player like that.
Arguably the best defensive line in football. There's always an odd man out.
Yeah. So possible casualties. Congrats, Alex Smith, on the comeback player of the year. You're gone. Or at least restructured, I think. Listen, he is their highest cap number at $23 million, right? They can save $14.7 million against the cap, which I think is a tremendous savings. I know he had a 5-1 record last year, but look at his numbers. Very game manager-esque.
Oh, yeah.
So he's had 66% completion, 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he averaged 198 yards a game. That you really don't need to pay someone $23 million for those numbers. You can get it from the guy, Heineke, that they just re-signed for dirt cheap.
But you identified quarterback as a need.
Yeah, well, there's other ways.
Can you roll into the season with Taylor Heineke as your starting quarterback in 2021?
No, there's other. Listen, you're probably going to hear me say Fitzmagic's name frequently. This would be a great opportunity for Fitzmagic, or maybe Ron Rivera somehow he rolls the dice and try to rekindle some of that Cam Newton magic. But their main priority, I do think, will have to be getting a wide receiver. Listen, there's plenty of big-name wide receivers out there, Allen Robinson, Kenny Galladay, Will Fuller, Juju Smith-Schuster. But I think the guy that would fit perfect for them, Corey Davis. He's a perfect number 2 receiver. And I really do think McLaurin is a number 1. He's a stud.
He's a great player.
Yeah,
he's a very good player.
And that's why you have to get a quarterback, by the way, to really optimize McLaurin's specialties there. So, listen, Corey Davis would fit perfectly there. Last year he had 984 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns, and that's when he was the number 2 in the offense in a run-heavy offense. So that's pretty impressive. I just think his size and reliable hands will make him a great complement to Terry McLaurin. And he will be expensive, but not terribly expensive, probably about $12 million a year. And last but not least, you mentioned Matt Milano before for the Eagles. I think it'll be a little more expensive for that, but I think I can picture them going out to Washington.
Okay. So, nice. Now we're going to disagree, and I love it. So I actually believe that the Washington football team and understanding Ron Rivera and what he's looking for, I think they're comfortable with Smith and Heineke as because of Rivera's a record guy. He's not a statistic guy, right? Like Riverboat Ron. He just wants to win the football game. I am not comfortable with that coming in, so I do think they need to, hey, does Ron go get his buddy Cam and try to get him to come in on the cheap and lighten that cap number? Or do you just bring in another veteran? Like I have people like A.J. McCarron or Mike Glennon or
Andy Dalton.
Yeah, or even C.J. Beathard, somebody who is just going to up the competition a little bit. I'm not saying these guys are on your field. If you're keeping Alex, like he's going to be on your field, but like up the ante a little bit, up the competition. I too have wide receiver number 1 glaring need right now. Hey, they're 5th in cap room, right? And there's not many teams that are in that threshold that they have. So I think they are in prime position to go get one of these top guys. You can never have too many good wide receivers. Yes, I agree. McLaurin is a 1, as is Allen Robinson. I think Chris Godwin is a 1. You know what I mean? Like, so what? Add them to your roster. to me, the guy that fits is going to be dependent upon who the quarterback is. And if I'm making the assumption that Alex Smith is going to be the quarterback for the Washington football team in 2021, I think Juju's the guy you got to go get. Why? Because Alex Smith doesn't push the ball down the field. That's not his strength. If you watch Juju tape in Pittsburgh, he plays really close to the line of scrimmage, right? Like, he can line up anywhere on the field you put him, but where he's had the most success is dragging across.
Drag routes, slants.
5, 7, 8 yards down. Boot Alex out, get him on the run, you drop it right into Juju. Another person that would be super sexy to me based on their skill set because they're similar is a Curtis Samuel, right? He's really special with the ball in his hands, right? So if you're dinking and dunking with this individual, yak, 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 yak. That's all I'm thinking about. I also had tackle as a big need here, especially if like Scherf's gone and based on like last year's play. And again, I'm just emphasizing how much cap room they have in comparison to other teams. Like, can they go get Villanueva, off of free agency? Can Ron some way, somehow repair a fractured relationship and convince Trent Williams to come back to Washington? I'm being fictitious here. I understand the damage has been done, but maybe a Russell Okung. Like,
perfect. That would be a good fit.
There are people there that they can go look at. The only outside name that I have, because I agree linebacker is a need for them, because I actually have them cutting John Bostic as a cap casualty here to save a couple $1 million. KJ Wright out of Seattle. I think he wants out. I think a lot of players want out of there right now. We'll talk about that when we get to the West. But I think he's still got some good years of football left in him, and I think he'd be a tremendous upgrade in there. So
all right.
So let's go ahead. Let's jump into the last team on the NFC East. The New York Football Giants. So now we're here in our home state here, Phil. So hopefully a lot of fans are going to tune in and listen to this component of it. I actually think the Giants, while on paper don't look like they're in a great spot, I think they have the potential to get themselves into a very good spot from a cap perspective, and I'm going to explain that. So just under $1 million. They got $900,000 in cap room right now, like 3.1 in dead cap. They're 19th in cap space. They have 20 free agents, which is pretty much like the league average if you really average it out. Biggest needs, wide receiver, edge rusher, interior defensive line, and a number 2 corner to go offset James Bradbury, who, by the way, I think is a stud.
No O-line?
Every team needs improvement on the O-line. It's just not my top priority for them right now. I do sprinkle some of that in here, but those are my priorities, right? And that's coming from me and Lou. We live in this backyard, and that's coming from me surveying Giant super fans as well, right? Like what they're thinking. Like I want to get an idea of what they're looking at as well. Top free agents, I only have 3. Leonard Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson. They literally are complements of one another. One of those are going to go. One of them's going to go 100%. And Wayne Gallman.
Yes.
And I have Wayne Gallman because can you trust Saquon back from this injury? And to me, Wayne Gallman was beyond serviceable filling in for Saquon while he was out. I thought he had a tremendous year given the circumstances.
I think Barkley would be a great change of pace back for Wayne Gallman. Hot take right there.
Hot take. Get out. Get out, right? Giant fans, don't listen to this man. He's just clickbait. So before I get into what they should do, I want to talk about some cap casualties, right? Because I think there's some things here that you can look at. I'll work backwards. People like Levine Toilolo and David Mayo are potential cap casualties.
They got a bunch of guys like that.
100%. I think they get rid of Zeitler. You mentioned offensive line as a need, but I see $10+ million in savings. Like, sorry, dude, you got to go. Golden Tate.
Yeah, he hasn't lived up to his contract.
Golden Tate. I mean, that's $8 million plus post June. $2 million if you cut post June 1. $2 million if you cut him right now. Here are the ones that I think people are going to be up in arms about. Jabril Peppers is almost $7 million in cap savings. I understand he was part of what you received in your trade for OBJ, but has he really been what you need to be? And, oh, by the way, you just drafted Xavier McKinney and you extended Logan Ryan. These are guys that play that position, right? So, again, is Jabril the guy? Giants fans are going to say, I don't want to give up Jabril Peppers, but the math says I might have to. The other, and I think it's going to be a 50-50 split, Evan Ingram. He is a $6 million cap savings. He is arguably at times their best offensive weapon, but arguably
That's not saying much, though.
Yeah, arguably at their times he's the biggest liability on the offensive side of the ball too.
Yeah.
So these are things that I can consider, because if you add all of that up, I just went from $900,000 in cap room to almost $30 million in cap room.
Can I add $5 more million?
Please.
Or actually $6 more million? Nate Soldier. They drafted Thomas out of Georgia.
Yep.
Why did they need Nate Soldier?
I think they're hoping he retires, right? I think that's what that.
They're gonna
comes down
trying to send AARP brochures and this is
dude,
fun.
we'll Bobby Bonilla you, send you $1 million a year for 20 years, just go away. Listen, the East is a very winnable division, and they have a lot of needs, and I think they're close. I think they're really close. Why I say wide receiver is because I think Slayton and Shepard are good players.
Complimentary.
Yeah, but they need one more. And if I'm thinking about if I can get this cap room, that one more is going to be probably more in the likes of Kenny Golladay or Corey Davis, not in Allen Robinson or Juju Smith-Schuster or Chris Godwin. I think that's a little bit more realistic. When I think of, so they're in a 3-4 now, right? So when I'm thinking edge, right? So guys who can stand up. The sexy name on the list is going to be Shaq Barrett. He's a pipe dream. I'm thinking they're more in line for people like Carl Lawson, Leonard Floyd, Hassan Reddick, Marcus Golden. These are guys that can fill that void and help them get after. But I tie this back to the defense, the true defensive front. Williams or Tomlinson has to be back. They have to retain one of those. And if they lose one of them, a great fit for them, if you ask me, based on his skill set. DJ Jones, the former San Francisco 49er, he can play either technique in the nose, in that 3-4, and he gets pressure up the middle. And I've personally watched this man eat double teams up all day long. So I'm not worried about what that nose tackle is asked to take on in a 3-4 front. So that's my take on the Giants situation. I think it could be really favorable for them, but they're going to have to make some moves that fans aren't going to agree with. Yeah.
So my take is, I know they have Tomlinson and Leonard Williams, both free agents. I actually think they should do the opposite what the Niners did. They have to put the money towards the better player. Niners let Buckner go away, and they signed Armstead because it was cheaper. I get it, cap reasons. Don't think that was the right move. So I think they have to tie up Leonard Williams. Listen, this guy was a beast last year. They traded for him. They sent the third and the fifth to the Jets. I think they're kind of pot committed, and he actually showed last year that he played pretty damn well. He had 11.5 sacks last year. He finished third amongst interior defensive linemen with 62 pressures. Listen, I'm starting to get to the point where if you're the interior defensive lineman is starting to become a little more important than the edge people, because you can scheme for edge rushers. It's harder to scheme against interior defensive linemen that provide that pressure. So they have to sign him. It's going to be costly, probably be like $16 to $18 million a year. But in my opinion, you sign him and you replace Dalvin Tomlinson, who's your classic, really good run stuffing nose tackle in the 3-4 alignment. But you just get a couple fat boys in there to try to pretty much
by committee.
Yeah, exactly. So some free agent targets, some players, I agree with you. They're going to go edge on the free agent targets. So depending on what they do with their salary cap and who they get rid of, look for a Melvin Ingram or a Bud Dupree, both who are productive edge guys are coming off injury-riddled seasons. So they might try to do that one-year prove-it type deals. Another, this is a name I want you to write down, Trey Hendrickson. He had a coming-out party last year in 2020. He had 13.5 sacks. I think that's a foreshadow of what's going to come. I think that's a possible target. And you're right. They're probably going to look to replace, Golden Tate. So look for Curtis Samuel. There's some connection there. Gettleman drafting Samuel out in Carolina. He seems to be liking those shifty receivers. So I can picture a Curtis Samuel. They probably won't like this, but also Nelson Aguilar too. He had a good year last year too. And once again, he's one of those burners, shifty receivers that fits that Gettleman mode.
Yeah. So the only position I left off that I said was a need, and it's because I wasn't paying drastic attention to my notes here, is that number 2 cornerback position, because I think that's important to their defense. I said before, I think James Bradbury is a monster. I think he's a terrific player, but I also think they could be in the market for not a top flight tier 2, you're not going to match that skill set, but maybe an aging Patrick Peterson, Jason Verrett.
That's something they would do.
Yeah. And somebody that I love that I think people are sleeping on is AJ Bouye. this guy can still play football, like, and he still wants to man up, and he's aggressive. And I just think that that's an opportunity, right? If you're bolstering the pass rush, get me some guys that are going to be aggressive, get up in some people's faces, especially with a 3-4 alignment, dude. That means you're sending pressure.
Yep.
Right? That is literally what it's designed to do. Your goal is to get after the quarterback. So get me corners, high risk, high reward, right? That's what I'm looking for. So, all right, awesome. That wraps up the NFC East. I love it. Obviously, let's see how much of that actually plays out. But looking at the clock, Lou, it's now time for us to jump into the AFC East at this point. So tell me who's leading off for the AFC East.
We're talking Miami Dolphins. This is going to be a really interesting offseason for numerous reasons. We've kind of covered it probably last podcast, but we won't get into that right now. So taking a look, they're actually in the top 10 in salary cap. They have $25 million. And impending free agents, there's nothing really. I have notes here, nothing to see here. There's no big name free agents where you really have to re-sign. Like you're not pounding the table like we need to re-sign this guy.
I have two.
Oh, well, okay. I mean, some of the free agents they have is Ted Karras, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Matt Breida, Eldon Roberts. These are not guys I really think you need to re-sign. So I don't think it's a big. Their salary cap they can put to other use. Top needs, interior offensive lineman, wide receiver, and running back because they will probably lose Breida.
I put quarterback.
I know you did. So
can I add one to the top free agents that I'm thinking of? Isaiah Ford. We talked about this when we were talking about the quarterbacks last week, that like some of these not household names are have the potential to be playmakers. I just happen to think he has a unique skill set, right? Like I just think he's like a gadget player for them. And I think if you're going to stay with the quarterback, you got to get crafty on who you're getting the ball, how you're getting them the ball. And I just think he has, and I mean, listen, he's 25. You'll bring him back super cheap. They have cap, like nothing to worry about. But I did have Ted Karras as well because I do think interior offensive line is a need, and he's a 15-game starter for them at center. Continuity is what I'm looking for there. So
doesn't mean he's good though.
Doesn't. But continuity. I said I'm going to repeat myself. The devil you know sometimes is better than the devil you don't.
Yep.
All right. Cap casualties.
Listen, I think they're in a good place. They really don't need to make any cuts. But if I was really nitpicking here, it starts with Albert Wilson. He'll save him $2.8 million, and he's clearly not the answer at the wide receiver position. You could look at Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain, both starting safeties, but they're still young and in their prime. They're pretty productive. So I really wouldn't really look too much into getting rid of them. And you want to keep that defense as much as possible the way it is. So the only person I really have for a potential cap casualty that I think would make sense is Albert Wilson.
Yeah, so just to add some flavor there, I have in my notes right here, don't tinker with this defense.
Yep.
A
lot of teams do that. They try to they get rid
cute.
of the people on the defense to supplement the offense because you can't pay both.
Don't get cute. Like I even have Rowe as somebody because I was nitpicking as well, but like a young good player that starts for you. Like why are you getting rid of that, right? Mm-hmm. So I agree, but tell me what they're doing.
Okay, so what's the one thing you don't do in free agency? You don't pay big money to free agent running backs. I really do think they look at Aaron Jones as a way to help Tua to establish that dominant running game. Here's the thing: Aaron Jones is a complete back. Yes, the last 2 years he's averaged 1,100 rushing yards. He's had 48 receptions on average, and he's also had 30 touchdowns. So he can help you in the passing game. He can help you in the running game. Take that pressure off of Tua. His deal, you have to look at Mixon and what Dalvin Cook got. They got roughly around $12 million. He probably was looking something like that because of the down year. So I picture them going after Aaron Jones. Also, listen, it's no secret they need help. At the wide receiver, the wideout position. You're looking at Allen Robinson, Kenny Golladay. I'm not looking at them because I really think Kenny Golladay would probably get tagged. If you want my honest opinion, Allen Robinson, doesn't want to play with a bad quarterback, and that's your opinion. He might have some apprehension playing there. Listen, teams always do this. They like to overcompensate for their shortcomings. So, listen, what's the one knock on the Dolphins? They can't stretch the field. How do you rectify the issue? You get a person that stretches the field. Guess who that player is? Will Fuller. Will Fuller. So I picture them making a big play at Will Fuller. And you were saying Ted Karras, you got to bring him back. No, you don't, because there's a better center out there in the free agency, Corey Linsley. He's a really good center who's equally good in both pass protection and run blocking. He's only allowed 4 pressures last year again with Green Bay. And I think that's a really attractive option for them to look at. And you have to understand, Aaron Rodgers holds the ball free, for a long time. So for him to only allow 4 pressures up that middle, I think it's pretty impressive. So those are some moves I think they can look at.
Yeah. So I agree that while I think you bring Karras back on the cheap, if you're going to be aggressive on the interior offensive line, I have Linsley or Alex Mack you go get. These are proven performers at the center position. From a guard perspective, why not take this opportunity to target Brandon Scherf or even John Feliciano from Buffalo? He's a name that I really like, and I'll talk more about him in a minute. I agree, running back and wide receiver to me are like top needs, right? So running back, I actually love their stable. They're young. I think they have, I believe that running backs are a dime a dozen. They are built on systems, whatnot, and you can win with running backs by community. I agree. You do not go out of your way to overpay. It is literally history will repeat itself, and it's not going to turn out well for you. It never does.
Seldom does it ever work.
So, but I also have, they're probably going to kick the tires on Aaron Jones. Because how do you not, right?
It actually just came out today, I think, that they're interested in each other.
Yeah, I mean, he's super productive. He gets lost in the Aaron Rodgers world. But what I like about him a lot is that he's good out of the backfield catching the football, right?
And he also doesn't have too much tread on him either.
And that provides you longevity. Yeah, he was a running back committee with Jamal Williams, right? So he's not Todd Gurley, who was getting 300-plus touches a year, or Le'Veon Bell getting 400 touches a season.
Exactly.
He's got some game left in him. He's got some years left in him. I totally agree. They need to go all out for wide receiver. I have here Will Fuller. But can Tua get him the rock? Because that's my skepticism in the first place. So I'm looking at, again, Curtis Samuel, somebody who can play a little closer to the line of scrimmage and be really creative when the ball's in his hand on bubble screens and slants and things of that nature. But they need to be all in. They need to go get a Godwin, an Allen Robinson type player. If you're going to stick with Tua, you have to give him weapons.
Yep.
You have to give him weapons. So I think we're in lockstep there.
Next up,
the New England Patriots, the Tom Brady-less New England Patriots. So I think it's really important, Lou, to address right out of the gate that the Patriots are going to get a lot of players back from COVID holdout last year. So the defense is instantly going to be improved. Bill Belichick is probably more motivated than he's ever been after watching his ex-quarterback win the Super Bowl and them not even make the playoffs. And having that guy motivated means they're going to do some things. On top of the fact, they're third in cap space in the NFL. They have over $62 million in cap room.
Bill Belichick with money, that's scary.
Right? They have 26 free agents, all of which I don't really think they care about, and I'll talk about in a second. For me, top needs, quarterback, wide receiver, tight end. They need to get better on offense. A lot of their player holdouts from last year are defensive players that are coming back, and they had a year off. They don't have that extra tread, that craziness traveling this year through COVID, right? Like mentally, I think they're going to be in a good spot, and physically they'll be in a good spot on the defensive side of the ball. Top free agents, Joe Thuney, I hope I'm saying that right.
Yep, Joe.
Their guard. James White is the running back. To me, he's just a staple of what the Patriots want to do. I think you have to find a way to bring that kind of player back for you. Mm-hmm. And then I do have one defensive player, J.C. Jackson, their cornerback. I just think he's a low-money individual that has shown moments of a high-level skill set that I want on my defense. That's my opinion.
Yep, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So let's cap casualties. I literally have here, Lou, nobody obvious. They have plenty of cap. I mean, I'm sure we can nitpick and go through, and I think a few teams, the teams that have cap, they're not necessarily looking for cap casualties, right? They'll get creative and find ways and to create room on their roster, but there was nobody that jumped out to me that said, here's $10 million in recognizable savings. And if it was, maybe I'm not willing to part with that individual yet. Do you have somebody that you would throw in there?
I do. Two players, actually. Julian Edelman, the guy's 35 years old. I just feel like it's his time to move on, to be honest with you. Also, Dante Hightower. Listen, he's 30 years old. I know he opted out last year, but you can save $9.9 million with him this year. I think that's something you have to look at. It's a middle linebacker making 9.9.
Yeah, but I think you look at some like what C.J. Mosley's making and some of these other middle linebackers are making. Like, is 9.9 really that expensive? Like, look what Fred Warner's going to go get paid right now. You know what I mean? And I do think he's the heart and soul of that defense, and I think he's a Belichick kind of guy.
Okay.
I just can't foresee them moving on. So now I want to get into the sexy talk about the New England Patriots. Quarterback.
Never thought I'd heard that before.
Quarterback. Cam is gone. Jarrett Stidham is not your starting quarterback. Can we agree on that? Can you please just nod your head yes and tell me that you agree with that?
We can agree.
Okay. Have the Patriots in the past proven that they don't value their first-round draft picks?
Yeah.
Right?
They usually trade out, yeah.
And we just agreed they have a lot of cap room.
Mm-hmm.
Go get Dak Prescott. Why not? He's going to be cheaper than Deshaun Watson's going to be. And obviously Deshaun Watson's a better quarterback. Nobody's having this argument right now. But, Lou, here are the facts. If Deshaun Watson costs you 3 first-round picks and players, right, and good players, based on Dak Prescott being if he is franchise tagged, that is 2 first-round draft picks you have to give up for him, and then you have to outbid the highest bidder, right? They are in clear position to outbid. I literally have written down in my notes, I will put this on the computer screen if you want to see this. Dak Prescott is Josh McDaniels' wet dream. Mm-hmm. He would love to have a quarterback of his talent. And I just think with this money, with this flexibility, with that bitter taste in Bill Belichick's mouth, why would you not at least kick the tires on trying to make a move like this?
Yeah, I just don't think it happens, unfortunately. Instead, you probably see the red rifle in New England.
So I totally have Andy Dalton here.
He fits them right perfectly.
But does he? Because they could have kicked those tires last year when they knew they were losing Tom Brady, right? I mean, I agree with you, right? Like, Andy Dalton's the logical fix here. I'm just trying to think sexy amongst the free agent market and something that is feasible. Like, it's not like I'm not sitting up here saying that some team that doesn't have the collateral to trade for Deshaun Watson is going to trade for Deshaun Watson. I'm sitting here telling you that they could literally make this happen. Are they willing to make it happen? And I think they should be willing to make that happen.
So now back to reality.
I have Andy Dalton as the reality. I do. I honestly do. Yep. He's a veteran leader. He can keep them in the games.
Efficient.
Yeah, you know, he
doesn't turn the ball over.
He's a game manager, right? And he's the same conversation we're having about Alex Smith, except he can get the ball downfield a little bit better.
Exactly.
Wide receiver is a huge need for this team. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Edelman, 35. What's he got left in the tank? I am literally the opposite of a believer in N'Keal Harry. I am actually higher on Jacoby Myers way more than I am Harry, just from a pure consistency standpoint. And I absolutely think with the cap room that the Patriots have, they're in the market for every top-flight wide receiver that's on this free agent list. Mm-hmm. I'll rattle them off again. Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kenny Golladay, Curtis Samuel. The outlier that I have here is dependent upon quarterback, but when we talk about stretching the field, you mentioned Nelson Aguilar before. I see him as a potential cheaper option to bring in. Even taking a flyer on somebody like John Ross right? Just somebody who can stretch the field and says, I can get over top of you and you have to at least account for me, right?
Yeah, I personally think they need to get either Kenny Golladay or they need to get Allen Robinson. They need a big type playmaker receiver that's a red zone threat, that can really strike fear in the opposing defenses. They need to get one of those. If one of those hit the free agency market, they have to go all in for one of those. That's what they need.
100%. But I think all of this is dependent upon the quarterback. So I'm still putting quarterback number 1 for them. The other, again, I said this was going to be all focused on offense is tight end.
There's 2.
Yeah, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith.
That's exactly what I have.
It's a no-brainer for me, right? They need a tight end that is not just a run-blocking tight end. They need somebody who can catch the ball, is good in space, is creative. And that takes the pressure off your wide receiver core. So if you don't get the top flight receiver that you're in line for, one of these receivers helps. We talked about it last week, how the tight end, or 2 weeks ago, that the tight ends are the third down target right now. The slot receiver, the tight end, like these pass catching individuals, not your normal possession type wide receiver. So I have literally those names bolded, underlined, and italicized in my notes that they need to be in the market on them. And the last thing I'll throw in here, and this is completely out of left field, don't be surprised if they're kicking tires on somebody like J.J. Watt to add to their defense.
Okay, so I don't have J.J. Watt per se, but because, listen, Belichick loves those versatile defensive chess pieces. Leonard Floyd, they moved him around out in L.A. Numerous places. He had a career high in pressures last year. Good career high in pressures, not only in pressures but also sacks. He was good against the run, solid in coverage. That's something I could picture them bringing him in.
Yeah, I'm not even disagreeing. I just think there's going to be an outlier on defense that they will bring in. And Lou, we got 2 teams left here. Yep. I always want to be cognizant of time for our listeners and our friends here in the studio as well who don't want to put up with us in the late hours of the night. Who we got?
Jets, Jets. They have an estimated cap space of $67 million, which ranks them second. So top needs, we have wide receiver, tight end, O-line, running back, linebacker, cornerback, physical trainer, water boy, basically everything.
22 positions.
Yeah, basically everything. They need everything. They're pending free agents. The only one that's really stuck out to me was Marcus May. Now, you didn't sound too high on him, but I actually think he's a versatile safety that can play both safety spots and also some nickel cornerback. Last year, he was PFF ranked him as the 4th best safety, with an 82.8 grade. And also, he had production too. He had 6 total interceptions, 2.5 sacks in his 4-year career with the Jets. So I think he's going to command a big payday, especially they lost Jamal Adams as well, probably that 12 to 14 million. Some complimentary players, Neville Hewitt and also Jordan Jenkins. They're nice role players, solid spot starters for injuries, great for depth. But listen, if they walk away, it's not going to kill them. Some cap casualties. Do you know who the Jets' highest cap number is? What player?
Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, $11.3 million. I know he's only 27 years old, but that guy cannot be your highest cap number. You have to get rid of him. He's productive when healthy. I hate that saying, because it never happens. Also, goodbye Henry Anderson. He's gone too. He has a $9.5 million cap number. They can save $8.2 million by letting him go. Listen, the production just doesn't match the play. He cashed in that 1 year with the Jets when he had 7 sacks for them. Now it's time to get rid of him as well.
Lou, can I add, so with the top free agents, I have Marcus May. I also have Jordan Jenkins. 2 other sleepers, I think Bradley McDougald, because you got him part of the Adams trade and was a starter for you, right? And Brian Poole, their corner, because that's an area of need for me. But so I've identified them as top free agents. I have the exact same cap casualties that you do. So tell me a little bit more about where they're going at these positions.
Listen, they have to revamp both sides of the ball. Obviously, some players I think they'll really take a look at. Juju Smith-Schuster, it's been rumored that they're looking at him. Joe Thuney to protect Deshaun Watson probably. Yeah, that wasn't a slip of tongue, by the way. Jonnu Smith, I think that they have to add a tight end. They've never
Did I say that last 2 weeks ago? Go get Deshaun?
I said it did. Jonnu Smith, they haven't had a tight end since, I can't even remember, to be honest with you. Kyle Brady, I think his name was. James Conner. Would they throw money again at a free agent running back? I don't know, but they literally have no one back there. On the defensive side of the ball, look for them to make plays for Carl Lawson or Yannick Ngakoue or Trey Hendrickson, like I said before, because they need to generate pressure with their front 4 because they're playing a new cover 3 scheme. So for that to really be successful, they need to generate the pressure with that. But also, they're going to need to take a look at cornerbacks too, because the cornerbacks have to hold up if the pressure doesn't get there. So look at Xavier Rhodes, Jason Verrett could fall solid there as well. And also John Johnson, who did a fantastic job last year playing that single high safety and can let May roam around.
Yeah. So I agree with you on the cornerback position. I think you're going to see a lot of Robert Saleh plucking from his past.
Yep.
I.e., don't be surprised if you see Richard Sherman in New York, right? Jason Verrett, K'Wan Williams. Like, these are all people that he's comfortable with, has won with, has production with, and will bring them to that defense. I have in my notes here, Lou, Jet fans, this is going to be a really fun offseason for you.
Yeah.
You're second in cap. You're at almost $70 million in cap. You're going to have some of those cap casualties. You're going to be $75 million plus in cap room, which gives you a lot of opportunity with a head coach that's going to be aggressive out of the gate and a lot of draft assets to go with this. So, like, enjoy this time. Hope this all comes to fruition and these folks make the right move. Mm-hmm. I agree also with edge. I think when it comes to edge, they can look at everybody because of their cap room, right? Like, they can literally look at the top names. They can bring in multiple of those individuals.
It's a good year if you need an edge rusher for free agency.
There's a lot of attractive names at the top of the list, and guess what? They have the second most amount of money to go make that happen. Mm-hmm. And the difference here is there is such a gap between some of these teams and what they're able to spend that you're not going to have the same competition you would have in normal years in like a bidding war. Like, some teams are going to be able to go out and name their price and be like, sorry, Mr. or Mrs. Free Agent, this is what you get. Take it or leave it. Like, nobody else is going to be able to offer this to you because they don't have that flexibility. So, Jet fans, have some fun from now till August, because then we'll see what happens. All right, so let's wrap this up.
Last but not certainly least.
Certainly not least. And I'm gonna start with some commentary before I get into the financials here. And my commentary is like, we need to keep expectations in line here, right? And what I mean by that is the Buffalo Bills are coming off an AFC Championship appearance. Every team, when you get to that level, you're going to have attrition. You've had players that play well. They're going to want to, if they are a free agent, they're going to want to test what their value is. So expect to lose some people here. They're negative $1 million in cap space, $2 million in dead cap. They got 20 free agents. To me, their top needs: right tackle, corner, interior defensive line, edge D end.
I have everything.
Okay.
Also have running back.
I don't. I like their running backs. I think they're a pass happy team anyway. When you have Josh Allen, next year they're going to be throwing the ball. You have to run in the NFL, but they're going to get creative and finding ways to throw the ball 40 times a game.
I'll wait and tell you what I think.
So, top free agents: Darrell Williams at right tackle, John Feliciano at guard. You'll laugh at these two: Andre Roberts and Isaiah McKenzie. Andre Roberts is 35 years old. That's a dinosaur for a wide receiver, but he is such a solid special teams performer for them that if you can bring him back cheap, like, hey, you got to play all three phases of the game, right? Isaiah McKenzie, he's one of those, just those, like I was talking about Isaiah Ford before, just one of those gadget players. You can get creative with him. You run your jet sweeps. You do those things. Not going to cost you a lot of money. And Matt Milano, just a young, good linebacker.
He's really good as a weak side linebacker. He was really good in coverage last year. Yeah. That's where he excelled at. And being it's a passing league, obviously now, I think they really need to get him.
I was super impressed by him.
Yep.
Some cap casualties. I think John Brown is a casualty.
Okay.
$8 million. I think Jerry Hughes is a casualty. $7 million. Vernon Butler, another $7 million. Lee Smith, $2.5 million. Mario Addison, $6.2 million. Taylor Matakevich, 3.4. What I just said there gives me another 26 million in cap space, and all of a sudden I'm in the top 15 in the NFL from the spending purpose.
Exactly. They have to get rid of those aging pass rushers, both Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes. They're 32, 33 years old. Between both of them, they have less than 10 sacks, and they can save a tremendous amount of money. I agree. They have to get rid of those two pass rushers and replace them with younger pass rushers.
Awesome. So we do agree there. I'm going to go by the position needs. So offense tackle, they need to re-sign Darrell Williams.
I do agree with that.
I thought he played well. He solves the immediate need. When I think about defensive back or corner specifically, look, you got Tre'Davious White. You have Levi Wallace. These are solid starters. You got Teron Johnson, who played super well in the nickel for you last year. But I think they can still go big and upgrade over Levi Wallace if they want to, if they free up all that cap. So, like, William Jackson out of Cincinnati, Shaquille Griffin out of Seattle. These are big-time names that they can go get, but they're the big-time names on this year's list. These aren't shut-down, lockdown corners that are going to command the top of the market. So I think their price tags are going to be within reason where they can make that move. But I can just see them being aggressive there. When I think of the line, interior, I think Kawan Short's a name that pops out to me. When I think of the edge, I'm thinking like Yannick Ngakoue. A surprise name here for me is J.J. Watt that they might be able to bring in. I think he fits the culture, fits what they do, and I think he'd immediately be their best pass rusher.
Can I throw one other name in there? I agree with you, Yannick Ngakoue. He'd actually be perfect for the Bills scheme, what they run. He's good for 8 to 10 sacks a year. He's young. He's 25 years old, but I don't think Carl Lawson is getting from the Cincinnati Bengals is getting enough play. He's a really underrated pass rusher, where I think his career is on an upward trajectory. So I would look out for that too. That would be a savvy move because it wouldn't cost you so much. It still can upgrade your cornerback positions and also tackle an edge position as well. So Carl Lawson, I'm really high and really intrigued with him.
Yeah. The only other position that I have, that I think they will explore is if I'm cutting John Brown, which could be a surprise, what other wide receivers? I'm actually really high on their wide receiver core. Stephon Diggs. I loved what Gabriel Davis did towards the end of the year. Cole Beasley, what you're getting from him, Mr. Reliable in the slot. Not going to be surprised if they're in the market for a player similar skill set to like a Keenan Cole, potentially a Kendrick Bourne. I think those are guys that would fit well in that huddle and fit well in that offensive scheme. The last thing I'll talk about is that tight end. Dawson Knox played well for them, but if there is an opportunity to go spin your wheels a little bit on somebody like Jonnu Smith, I just think you have to do it to round out that offense. And let's call it what it is. Josh Allen was in the MVP discussion last year. He personally won me 2 fantasy football championships, so I praise him a little higher just because of that. But all joking aside, it is in my best interest to go get him as many weapons as I possibly can find. Of course. And that's how I would wrap up the Bills, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah, so the only thing I'm going to add is I agree. You do have to get him as many weapons. They could go a different direction. Listen, I can depend on what they want to do in their backfield. Listen, you're saying that you are fine with their running backs. I'm not. Singletary, I don't think is cutting it. I do like Zach Moss, but if they want to be more a physical, punishing a running team, once again, James Conner could be an option out there. But let's say they want to continue with their pass-happy offense. Players like Kenyon Drake or Le'Veon Bell, Le'Veon Bell will provide. I'm scared to say this, but that veteran, not leadership, but that veteran presence. And I also think he humbled himself after the last couple of years, too. And now he's just looking to win a championship, so he would humble himself. So Le'Veon Bell and Kenyon Drake would both provide that wrinkle where they can catch the ball out of the backfield, maybe do a little more things with screen passes and what have you. So I think those are some positions. If they don't go to that tight end position, maybe they'll focus on it. It'll be cheaper, not as much competition. And like I said, it can still provide some additional juice to that offense.
Yeah, Lou, I actually love the Le'Veon Bell point, right? If he's humbled enough, if he's coming in at the right price tag, I think, my God, a running back that I can hand off 7 to 10 times a game,
even the passing game,
but line up in the slot, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about. Like, if I had him and Beasley kind of crossing over one another, like, that's a win all day, in my opinion.
Yep.
Lou.
This was fun, man.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So, obviously, we're on this topic for quite some time.
Should we tease them what's coming? What division's next?
Yeah. I'm fine with that. Go ahead.
All right, we're going a little north next. We're going bundle up, people. We're going to the AFC and NFC North. So make sure you wear your Montclair jackets and your hoodies and what have you. So it's gonna get cold, guys.
So that means Packer fans, Bear fans, Steeler fans, Raven fans,
Browns.
Tune in because we're going to get into the nitty-gritty just like we did here with the NFC and AFC East. Lou, can't say it enough how much I enjoy sitting here rapping with you.
Good times. Good times.
Absolutely. As always, you listen to We're Talking Football podcast coming to you from a shared universe podcast studio in Bellworks at Bellworks Office Plaza in Homedale, New Jersey. And we look forward to chatting with you again next week.
Signing off.